What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Game Time Discussions. I'm Emery Cuzzy. I'm sitting here with Cameron Selby, and today we're going to go over the Thursday night football slate between the New England Patriots and the New York Jets. Not necessarily the most attractive slate we've had by any means, because you start out, you get Baltimore, KC. That's always fun. Even last night's slate was even more fun. Talking about the Philadelphia versus Atlanta game. Not exactly sure what happened there. That was a crazy last 5 minutes, and Darnell Mooney lost me some money, Darnell Mooney took me from first and second place all the way down to 11th, which was a big difference in the money spot. But that was really cool to get some money going. So
yeah, it was very interesting seeing Philly gave the game away. Just kind of very poor. I don't even know how to describe it really, but
if he catches that ball, it's the right play.
It's the right play, but when you're thinking about the sense of outcomes and the worst case scenarios for running it versus throwing it, far riskier to throw it than it is to run it. Because maybe you fumble it once in every 100, just QB sneaks or just hand it off up the middle. But dropping the pass, that happens every now and again, and so
the worst time.
And on top of that, there's the extra 40-50 seconds that you lose from say you just turn it over on downs, they have 50 seconds to go with no timeouts, and then you also are more conservative because a field goal can tie it.
Right.
Versus they got to go be aggressive to go win the game, and that's kind of 3 plays, and they were already
Darnell Mooney had them going. I agree completely.
Yeah, in terms of our showdowns, didn't really work out a ton for either of our ends just because both running backs did not score. And, I had a lean towards Kyle Pitts, and he just was not involved once again. He just is cursed for, coaches just getting him involved as a former 4th overall pick. But that's neither here nor there. Let's try to break down this slate as best we can. Second straight matchup, AFC East rivalry game. Both teams heading into this slate 1-1. And, I guess it's kind of a crucial game. In the grand scheme of things, I don't know how competitive it'll be. It's a 6.5 point spread. 37.5 over under is never sexy from an aesthetic perspective. But like I said, these prices are crazy. But we'll just try to do our best to break down and put up some first looks for you guys.
Yeah. So talking about this game, New England actually has the lowest implied total at 15.5 on the whole week. So that's kind of like the start of where you start talking about how boring this game could be. We're gonna talk about some things about possibly doing kickers and defenses and how exciting that can be, leaving a lot of money on the possibly leaving a lot of money salary left over. That's kind of how the slate looks like going.
I mean, you kind of are going to by default in most regards, just because I look at the price slate. Like you got 3, or I guess 4 if you include Aaron Rodgers, 4 10K plus, 2 11K plus. Then there's 1 9,000. That's usually the other quarterback. And then there is one player between the next $3,000, and it's Hunter Henry. And he had 100 yards at halftime. And then not much else, but that was such a outlier, hard to I guess have faith in. I may have had interest in him if he was going to be in the 5K range, but he is not. So it's really hard. Initially, when I wrote down the player pool and stuff like that, I put in Ramondre Stevenson as a fade because 11-4, that's crazy. But you convinced me otherwise because there's just nowhere to go on the slate other than just spin 3 of the top 4 and just figure it out and cover your eyes and pick a couple of cheap guys.
Yeah, even so, we'll talk about the game script in a minute, but even getting a 0 is okay almost on this slate. It feels like really weird, but we'll talk about why that is in a second. Looking at the New England side of the ball, look at the flex prices. You can see the Ramondre is $2,400 more expensive than anybody else on his team. He has deserved it, though, price-wise, for how he's played in the first 2 games.
Especially his opportunities. He's had 28 in the first game, then 26 in the second game. Just incredible start. We have a lot of him as RB2 or RB3 because we did a lot of hero builds in best ball. So that feels good. He's really their only consistent weapon right now. And, obviously the price is warranted. This is maybe the most expensive he'll ever be on a showdown slate in particular. But again, he's viable just because of the other options and just not being able to trust many things other than the top guys on this slate.
Yeah, exactly. And he is one of the top guys price wise. He is second on the slate in price, along with Brees Hall over 11,000. Jacoby Brissett, he is basically a zero at quarterback right now. He has gotten a whopping 140, what is it, 140 yard average or something this year, 135 yard average. That's probably not going to get it done, and it's a little nerve wracking when you're going to probably most likely want to fade a quarterback because he just isn't going to get you any points.
Yeah, unless you think that New England can legitimately get 2 touchdowns through the air in this game, I just don't see a way of playing him. I mean, he has 1 touchdown through 2 games. He's averaging less than 10 fantasy points per game. Paying 9,000 for that is just way too risky to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously the the Jets defense is not nearly as dominant as we thought they would be, especially early on. But they're still good enough to hold somebody like Jacoby Brissett to pedestrian numbers once again.
Right.
And I don't think he's played poorly enough to warrant, a possible replacement or Drake May looking over his shoulder yet, because they were in overtime away from being 2-0 starting this season. So
craziness.
I'm impressed based on that regard, but as a player, individual fantasy player, he's just somebody that we're not going to play today.
Yep.
Or on this slate.
Yeah, on this slate. Yeah. And then looking at some of his pass catchers, we'll put Hunter Henry in there, Demario Douglas, Jalen Polk, KJ Osborne, and I guess we'll throw Austin Hooper in there. And then the last one I want to talk about is Tyquan Thornton. So here's our group of guys that have gotten 135 yards receiving in the last 2 games per game. The one that sticks out obviously is Hunter Henry. He did have 100 yards, and like we talked about at halftime last game. But the only other guy that we can really talk about is Jalen Polk, scored the only touchdown of the year through the air for them. They're just not very exciting, and I think that with the fact that you have Hunter Henry at 7,800, who we're most likely going to not play, everybody else is 4,200 or less. You probably need one of these guys. And that's uncomfortable as heck because you do not know who's catching that ball.
Exactly. I mean, if you want to run through the first 2 games, obviously there's 4 different guys that have played 50% of the snaps. And that's KJ Osborne, Demario Douglas, Jalen Polk, and then Tyquan Thornton. Nobody has had consistent volume outside of Ramondre Stevenson, really, because he had 5 targets in this previous game. He had 3 the previous one before that. Hunter Henry had 12 targets last game, but he had 3 the week before. And then in that same game, Jalen Polk led the receivers in targets. He had 3, and 2 of them were in their first quarter, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, the touchdown was. So it's really just hard. Like I said, I think one of them is going to be in the optimal line. No confidence in who it is. They're all basically within 1,000 of each other, and then obviously Austin Hooper's just the dart throw,
right?
And then Tyquan Thornton, who I guess he had 58% of the snaps in week 1, week 2 not so much. He wasn't really involved in either game. I mean, Demario Douglas was somebody that we loved in best ball. Hasn't had his game yet, but he was this consistent slot receiver in previous years, so maybe he's the guy. I don't know, but all of them are tournament plays. All of them probably will be pretty even in ownership because nobody stands out really. Like I said, I thought Hunter Henry going into the slate without looking at prices was going to be a chalky New England secondary player, and just 7,800, you have to go up to him.
Right.
And so I don't think many people are going to want to do that, especially with the big 4. I guess I'm going to include Aaron Rodgers just because if you're going to play one quarterback, it's going to be Aaron Rodgers. You're not going to fade him and then play Jacoby Brissett. That doesn't make a ton of sense, and that's really only going to work out if there's some kind of injury or poor field conditions or something of that nature.
Yeah, I think that the problem too is like Demario Douglas, like you talked about, he's 4,200. He's the most expensive in this group, but like they're all so cheap. And Antonio Gibson can put in this group too. I feel like that as a whole, they're also cheap and they just are so uncomfortable because you have to probably pick one. And I just haven't gotten to a consensus on where I want to go. But I think the Jets side is a lot easier, which makes me feel good. Then I can at least like have something to fall back on almost.
Right.
The guy that, of course, we're going to talk about and want to get to are up top. Both of these guys up here, including, and then we'll put Aaron Rodgers in there. These three guys, priced three of the top on the slate. Brees Hall is basically the do-it-all guy. He had 7 receptions, I believe, in this last game, 5 in the first game. He's just a guy that we want to get to for sure, and he's going to hopefully, get to 20, 22 points at his price. That would probably
he's
pay
shown
off.
exactly why he was a first-round pick in every single format or draft, redraft, best ball, whatever you want to call it. Getting 6 and 8 targets, and then just basically over 22 opportunities in each of the first 2 games. Not the most efficient, but you score each game and you get 22 touches, you're probably going to average about 17 to 20 points. In most of those occasions, New England is no different. Obviously, they've been a little more susceptible to the pass, especially with last week. They allowed 2 different players to have 10 for over 100 in Seattle. So basically, it's just, and then with the Jets in general, they just essentially, it's just been Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall getting all of the touches. I'm not surprised at all. He's the most expensive on the slate. Probably is going to be the most popular captain as well. And it's warranted, honestly. He's the safest by far. And really the only person that I would even consider in majority of my lines. I don't even know if I can get to 3 lineups that I'm comfortable with in this slate. But if I did, all 3 of them are going to either have Brees Hall or Garrett Wilson as captain, in my eyes.
Yeah, we'll talk about our must plays in a minute, but I don't think you should be surprised if Brees Hall is on that list. Then talking about Garrett Wilson, he's also, one of the top guys. He was also a first round pick in both formats. He has actually underperformed based on where you're picking him and what he's done, but he has not scored the touchdown. And I mean, truly, like, you look at this first game, I actually didn't expect him to have 11 targets when they were kind of getting beat pretty bad.
And none of those really came towards the end.
Right.
Other than, when Tyrod Taylor came in, he got 2 targets his way, but he had 4 catches on the first drive. And we thought it was going to be just, okay, who's going to have the 30-point game first between him and Brees Hall? And then just really, he was the kind of, he really just didn't get involved the rest of the way. And then Tennessee, say what you want about them, they're 0-2. They have one of the best 5 or 6 defenses so far this season, both through the run and the pass, and they invested heavily in the secondary, and it paid off. And really, the only way that New York was moving the ball was really through Brees Hall,
right?
And so he wasn't, getting his boom game's coming. He's one of those guys that started off slow. There's a lot to be concerned about, but he's basically one of the few that has, avoided the injury bug, because so many first and second round picks have been just
absolutely
hit just left and right. But there's also a couple guys, him and Jamar Chase, for example, that we have a lot of shares of. Both of them struggling to start out. Both of them also have a lot easier stretches coming up in the next month. And we're probably going to have a lot of lines that we talk about, whether it's on Showdown slates, primetime slates, or even the main, that we're going to be talking about those as viable plays, because great bounce back spots. And so, like I mentioned previously, Seattle, 2 different players, 10 catches, over 100 yards. DK Metcalf scored on a long touchdown. That helped your fantasy team. I know that. And then JSN helped my fantasy team.
Yes, he did.
We had a ton of them as well. But yeah, so I think he's warranted. I'm not sure if the 1,600 price gap would be the same if he didn't struggle so much early on. But like I said, he's the only other viable captain. It's a PPR format. His boom game's coming. Yeah, I just think he's definitely one of the true must plays on the slate. I just don't know if it'll be the boom game on Thursday night.
Absolutely. Completely agree. Talk about Aaron Rodgers. He actually has been also struggling. We'll do Aaron Rodgers pretty quick, so we'll get to some of the other pass catchers on the team. But, just hasn't had a 200-yard game, and his line is set at 211.5. And I thought that was surprising, because I don't think that New England has a bad defense by any means. I just I think, with what the situation is, the 37.5 point total, the 22 implied total, I'd expect them to, run the ball and him have 28-ish attempts and, not go crazy.
We honestly kind of called this, and why we have 0 shares of him. Essentially, we maybe squeezed out 1 by default because we got sniped on backup quarterbacks. But yeah, we just said there's no mobility at all. He has not thrown for 300 yards in like 2.5 years. He's coming off an Achilles injury, and there's really nowhere to go in this offense other than just to two guys.
Yeah.
And so, that's kind of what it's been. Obviously, two tough matchups to start, both on the road. This is their first home opener. But really, 2-3 touchdown games are the booms that he's going to have. It's not going to be because he's thrown for 400 yards anymore, or getting a rushing touchdown.
Right.
I promise you, anytime on the goal line, there is no tush push or quarterback sneak going on. It is to Brees Hall. And then, like I said, it's just multi-touchdown upside if it is a thing. He's probably going to have a 15-point game, 16-point game, but on a slate like this, that is completely viable.
Yes.
Just due to the lack of other options.
Right. So let's talk about some of the other pass catchers, guys that we're probably either going to have a little bit of or fading completely. Alan Lazard, who made some catches. This guy is important to talk about. Tyler Conklin. And Malak. There we go. Okay, so they're all up on the board now. As you can see, some of the guys that are up there, Mike Williams. He actually had some snaps this last week. He got 65% of the snaps. He is still not really we really still don't want any of him. We're hoping that other people see that same snap count bump and they try to get some of him. Then you go to Alan Lazard, who actually did have a ton of snaps. He has 82% on this last week and 100% the first week. So he's at least an option, but he's 5,800. And if you want to go up, you're going to have to fade one of the top four to get him. So it makes it a little bit more uncomfortable.
Right. When we talked about the Monday night slate in week 1 in the Discord, we were just saying the easiest fade was Mike Williams on the board because he was 6,200 coming off an ACL injury. We were actually surprised he was active, but we were just like, there's no way he's just going to come in and have an immediate workload. Lo and behold, he played like 8 snaps, didn't even get a target. This week, obviously, he played a ton more. Still only had one target for 19 yards. So I'm not paying 6,200 until you are either 2,000 plus less, or you start having 6-7 targets consistently, like we saw when he was with the Los Angeles Chargers. Alan Lazard, like you said, I'm so mad that the CMC news happened because I had him in all 3 of my lines as a tournament play. And then obviously CMC gets ruled out, and Jordan Mason, obviously you got to play him. And then we just didn't need to go down to Jordan Mason. We had over 1,000 remainder on our lines, and we didn't even have to go past the kicker.
Yeah, exactly.
And it just kind of hurts that we had him and it just didn't work out that way. What's funny is Braylon Allen, our Mr. Wonderful as our
308th
20th round early best ball investment, way more involved early on than I thought he would be. I didn't expect any kind of split. It was a true handcuff situation. But he jumped from, 18%, 9 snaps just in week 1. Obviously, most of them came when, Brees Hall left the game because it was just out of hand. But this game was a close game, and he actually performed 2 touchdowns. Was the youngest guy in NFL history to have a rushing and a receiving touchdown. He's still just 20 years old, guys. Pretty crazy. But 5,200 is pretty tough to think about. It's gonna be a positive game script for the Jets in our eyes, but I don't know. He'll be an interesting one to see if we can squeeze in. I kind of feel somewhat comfortable with them, but maybe I'd just rather do a double defense, double kicker or something. That's what I was
going to say. We'll talk about a contrarian line where we get some of these guys like Braylon Allen, who did have 19.6 points last week, did catch a touchdown, which was actually more surprising than the rushing, obviously. And then the other guys in this grouping is, Tyler Conklin, Gibson, and Corley. I just can't get to them. Corley had 1 snap all year.
He had 1 snap in week 1. He had 1 snap in week 2.
2 snaps.
The only difference is week 2, he actually was targeted on his week 2 snap.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not touching you until you start having way more snaps.
Yeah.
And unless Alan Lazard goes down or Mike Williams is out for any reason, he's just not going to be able to get on the field. So I'm just going to have a hard pass for me. Xavier Gibson is actually, their special teams guy that actually has some snap upside. He actually had 59% of the snaps in week 1. And then he was the, negative beneficiary of Mike Williams getting increased snaps in week 2. Only was on the field for 6 snaps. Complete dart throw. whatever is what it is. Tyler Conklin, 90% and 93% respectively, first 2 weeks of the season, but he's just not getting really targeted. Aaron Rodgers has never used his tight ends. That's why we didn't really love him. He was just one of those like touchdown or bust,
Yeah,
tight end
exactly.
threes.
At the end of it.
But he's cheap enough to where he could be one of those guys.
Yep. Well, I think this game's pretty easy. You want to get as many of the expensive guys and then figure out who you want to throw darts at. I want to hear your game script for the game, just so we can kind of get an idea of how we're going to build these lines and what you're thinking and how it'll go.
So essentially, I have the Jets. We're very kind of similar in this regard, but I have it 2010 in favor of the Jets. Just terrible slate, nothing to trust other than Hall and Wilson, and everything's a dart throw. Play light is what I would say. I never fade just not playing a slate entirely, unless there's just straight up, it's this bad, but even worse in terms of the guys up top. But yeah, I think you can get weird in this slate, but just don't get crazy and fade more than a couple or
Right.
one of the guys up top. I really think this is a slate where you need at least 3 of the top 4, if not all
All
4,
four.
if you can even find a way to fit that.
So you said play light. This is something I talked about on Sunday was when I was like, I hate this primetime slate. I don't know what to do with it. And then that was the slate that I actually hit on 20X. So that's what he means by play light. I played way less money than all the other slates, but that one hit. It helped my bankroll because I played it. Just, make sure you bankroll manage a little bit. On mine, we're actually only 3 points different. I have the New York Jets winning 23-10. Cam had 20-10. I think this is a kind of like you should have maybe a couple lines, and one of the lines should be double defense, double kicker, or some combination of 3 of those. I would try to get a good amount of raw points on this slate, and what that means is like it doesn't have to correlate so much because truly you're just trying to find like guys that are going to get you above their like what's it called, like their 2x 3x on their price tag, especially at the lower ends, and then try to shove in Brees Hall, Garrett Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, and Ramondre Stevenson to get those are the raw point guys. They're going to have the most points, and they might by themselves win out, leaving even possibly a 0 on your team if it has to happen that way.
Yeah, so before we start our lineup building, going through our 2 must plays on the slate, it is the chalkiest 2 must plays that we can ever think of. It's Brees Hall, it's Garrett Wilson. Find a way to play them both. At least one of them at captain. That's probably the 2 or 3 lines that we're about to build. It's going to consist of every single one of those. I wouldn't even get cute in trying to go, New York Jets defense up top, which sometimes we think that it's a viable thing. It's just not worth it on this slate. There's no reason to. You don't have to go cute or get cheap at captain to afford all 4 of them. I don't think, even if Aaron Rodgers hits his 15, I don't think it's going to break you if you do end up fading him in favor of all 3 skill players up top.
Right.
So that's just kind of our biggest must plays, and then you talk about our biggest fades on the slate.
Yeah, so also normally we do a possible captain's line, talk about what that is. Well, there's 2 of them, and they're the same ones as our must plays, like Cam said. So we'll skip on that. The fades, though, we're going to fade Jacoby Brissett. You saw his numbers, guys. It's not pretty, and we're most likely also going to fade Hunter Henry, but he has more upside than Jacoby Brissett on the same team. So I'm going to stay away from Jacoby Brissett. And then the other guy is Mike Williams. We have not seen it. And since last year, of course, before the injury, before his 3rd injury at this point in his career, we just want to see it before we get on that train. 6,200 is a little steep, especially if you want to get the top 4. You cannot do it if you want to throw Mike Williams in your line. So that's why we're going to fade those 2 guys. And then I'll let you do the contrarian plays. And yeah.
Yeah. So the tournament plays, I think, like I said, getting kind of weird if you did invest in Brees Hall like you think you are, going Braylon Allen. Also, if you usually double up on running back, that's an interesting way to go, because a lot of times, most situations, it's you either play the starter,
right,
or you play the backup. Not many play both. Some people, even more than that, fade both. But yeah, he got a decent amount of looks, 11 opportunities last week. Obviously, he only had 2 the week before, but it's a positive game script for him. So if you can afford him, and that's a guy you trust more than a kicker, in addition to a defense, or you just don't like either of those options, like I don't think he's a bad way to go. It'll be interesting to see his ownership, but I don't think it'll be too high considering that he's over 5,000.
Yeah, I agree. So now that we've talked about that, would you like to do the honors?
Yeah, I'll start it out. I'm gonna go ahead and go with Garrett Wilson as my captain in this line.
Okay, let's put him in there. All right, let's see it.
And then so we're gonna put in Brees Hall, and then I'll just go ahead and put Aaron Rodgers in. I think my line is gonna be a 5-1 build, probably, and then we'll just kind of see. So I have a 2010. Usually, if you're projecting somebody to score less than 13 points, like you mentioned, their implied team total of 15.5 is the lowest on the entire week of 32 teams. So when you think that somebody can be held under 13 points, which is 4-point bonus, defense is always viable. I don't think it's cheap or expensive enough for my taste, so I'm going to put them in. And then this is where it gets unfortunately weird. So I'm gonna go ahead. You can scroll all the way down, unfortunately.
Hello.
So you can go back up.
Too low.
I'm gonna go ahead and put in Tyler Conklin as a possible. You get 2 catches and you're the touchdown scorer. And then we go all the way back up. And I'm gonna go ahead and go with my guy Jermero Douglas.
Perfect.
For whatever reason, just I have no confidence. Like I'm not gonna have any more confidence if I go somewhere else.
Right. Any of these receivers, you feel wrong.
Not at all. But usually a 5-1 build in a game like this is kind of what I kind of lean towards. You shouldn't be afraid of that, especially if you don't think it'll be a tight ball game. Yeah, that's just my first look.
I also had a 5-1 build that I will want to talk about. It's not my first look though. I have funny enough, I have a 3-3 for my first look, which is actually surprising. I did not expect that to be what I got. I don't think
many people will have that.
Yeah.
So let's see it.
I'm gonna shove in all 4 of the top 4, and so I think that. I'm sorry, not all 4. Top 3. You have to get 3 of the 4, and I want to put Brees Hall at captain. So I want to shove in the top 3, not the top 4. Apologies. This is where I kind of started, actually. I was like, screw it. I'm getting them all. I'm just going to get the raw points. If he goes for 30 and he goes for, say, 16 and he goes for 16, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, you get the highest 3 scores on the slate.
Exactly. And then I'm going to come down here because I don't believe in the Patriots. I really thought about going right here to this team, to the defense, just like you. It didn't leave me much money, right? So I was like, okay,
it's tough.
What can I do with that? I found that I wanted to get to Tyquan Thornton for his opportunities on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, okay, so now I have $3,700, and I was saying, okay, should I go KJ? Should I go Antonio Gibson? He probably has a higher floor. It's like, okay, a little weird. But you look around, you're like, okay, all you have are New England guys right here where you're looking at. I decided to go with Antonio Gibson and doing a double running back for the New England Patriots. I have the defense of the other team. It's a little weird, but why not, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's not the craziest thing to do. Like I said, going double running back is not that insane. And we saw last week where Antonio Gibson had 103 yards on 12 opportunities.
Yep.
And usually he's a pass catching back, but no, most of that was through rushing attempts. He's the cheaper guy. I don't think it's a bad first look. I don't think many people are going to be duping that line, even though there's only 100 remainder.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too. That's why I liked it too, is because I was like, I can see a path for 5 of these guys or 5 of these picks. The Jets have a lot of guys on their team. But yeah, so everybody but Tyquan, I was like, okay, I can see the path for everybody else. And then if he catches 2 passes for 10, 12 yards, I'm very happy with his production at 1,600. That's the 2x I need, right? So that was kind of where I wanted to go with my first look. I do want to do a contrarian look with the defenses, the double defenses. Okay. So we're going to build this one, as our together one that we haven't talked about yet. I would like to know who you want to put at captain. We're going to put both defenses in.
Let's just go Brees Hall. I
Okay.
mean, he's the safest one. He's going to be the most popular. Let's just eat it and figure it out. The bigger question is, I mean, obviously we're not fading both Ramondre and Aaron Rodgers. So which of those guys are we going to go with? I mean, if we do that, there's only 900 remainder for Ramondre, so it's going to be really hard to have faith in
That's
anybody.
true. Let's see what happens if I put Aaron Rodgers in. I guess we have 2,300. That's really not that comfortable either, though.
That fits you. Thornton again, Gibson.
Yeah.
Or we can just try to spin down at captain a little bit and see what else we can get up to.
Let's flip these guys and see what this looks like.
In all actuality, I think if you did do that, that's enough to kind of get what I was getting previously, which was, I essentially went to Mario Douglas because I had to put a jet in.
Right.
So obviously you can, if you went Patriots defense, but went five skill players, that's a little raunchy.
Scary, right? But we could always go Austin Hooper or something. What if we didn't? What does this do? I just want to see the pricing. 1,700 leaves Tyquan Thornton. What about that? That's $100 left over.
Sure.
That is, it's all gross. Everything we're gonna do today is gross. But
it's not our favorite showdown. But I mean,
actually, funny enough, that fits what I was talking about with raw score. That right there fits the raw score. You get Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, and the Ramondre for your raw score players. You think that the game's going to be low scoring, like we both do. New England could get a bunch of turnovers. They could get a couple sacks. Like, that's not out of the cards because I don't believe this. I watched Mekhi Becton get just absolutely destroyed on a twist last weekend, and I was like, okay, well, maybe he's not. He's better at guard, but he's not good. So maybe that's a possibility. I don't hate it. It's very different. I don't think anybody will have it. I actually don't know what the most common line will be on this slate. And normally we can kind of tell. We're like, okay, we're going to expect something like this. But yeah, I don't think
there's no easy value that's just like, I know everybody's going to try to click on that.
Right.
Or I know he's going to have a gap in ownership. There's nothing like that. It's just everybody's going to have 15 to 20%. I don't even know who's going to be the biggest tournament of them all in terms of the New England receivers, especially. But yeah, that's our first look. Before we do get out of here, let's talk our top props of the day for this slate. Obviously, both of us shit the bed with our props of the week last week.
That was a crazy
Josh
game.
Allen, I had over 38 rushing yards. He had 3. And then Emery had Jalen Phillips for half a sack for a boost of 2.05x. Obviously, that was a really negative game script for both of those very early on. It was a 3-score game basically at halftime, and Josh Allen didn't need to run, and Jalen Phillips didn't need to go get the quarterback. So it just, the game script did not align at all with how we intended for that game to go. We'll see if we do it this week. I'm going to start with my prop of the week. It's actually it's a boost, it's a pepper, whatever you want to call it. Demon. It's Garrett Wilson. If there is a boom game that's coming soon, I just think he's due for a score. 1.35x for his anytime touchdown prop. I'm going to go ahead and hit the over on that. In terms of prize picks, if you try to find a way to do a 6 pick, it boosts you 9x from the typical 25x that you'll get. So pretty decent boost for what I thought would be just kind of a 1.1. I think it's pretty solid value. And again, if they are implied to get 3 touchdowns, I don't think all 3 are going to Breece.
Right.
So I'm going to just give Garrett Wilson one and try to get that little boost.
And the law of averages says sooner or later he's going to score a touchdown, and we're going to be happy because he does, and we get it at 1.35x because right now you're getting the discount because he hasn't done it, I feel like, and he hasn't looked impressive. So now it's like the perfect time to get on it. So yeah, I like it. Let me go get mine. And mine, of course, is going to be the other guy that we are going to get 100% of. Don't let it surprise you. Let's see if his line has actually changed since I put this down earlier. It is not. It's going to be the 29.5 for Breece Hall receiving yards. I just think, 5 receptions game 1, 7 receptions game 2. He's got 12 on the year, and he's gonna with if he gets his 4.5 reception over, he doesn't need much to get 6 yards a catch. So that's definitely where I'm going with this. I think it's a cool, great play. He's got a 13.5 longest reception. I just don't get it. It doesn't make sense in my personal opinion. So let's get over 29.5 receiving yards for Brees Hall.
Yeah, let's help the game scripts enough to where he can get there. And
Right.
it's just not him having a good game or having a solid play and then just isn't working out in our favor because we picked the wrong prop.
Right.
I also thought it was worth mentioning his rushing touchdown, just purely rushing touchdown prop was a boost as well. But yeah, before we do get out of here, I want to let you know they are running back on both sides. Free squares once again. So CeeDee Lamb at half a yard, total yard. Max $15 on Underdog. You can use that. Boost your bankroll however you please. It's a one-time thing. And also Underdog bringing back their promos. So every single day they're going to be releasing new promos. They had some discounts yesterday for the Monday night slate as a 25% boost, I think, on whatever you play. And then there's going to be more discounts and stuff throughout the week. So get on that. And then Caleb Williams. He's been shitting the bed, but guess what? He's hit that half a yard every single week. Time. So we're going to go back to it again. $25 max for Prize Picks. Hit the over on Caleb Williams free square, and then we'll see if we can have a much, much better week and not just be so close, but get so far.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was like little things we did wrong. We picked the wrong side of the Rams and Arizona game. We decided we were going to go with the Rams this week and go Matthew Stafford over Kyler Murray, and obviously that was the wrong side. But truly, I didn't go down. I wasn't negative by any means. I was pretty even until yesterday's slate, and so on the week I'm up. I know you're really close, so we're.
No, I had a down week, and it just straight came up because Caleb Williams could not connect for 10 more yards with DJ Moore. That was a big old I guess 4-pick that I missed out on for that, but it is what it is. Rough start to the year, but we're gonna bounce back. Just keep on trusting the process. Like I said, I'm not gonna just keep on or take a break because I missed a couple weeks in a row. Because the next time you do, that's when the magic happens. Even M said on that primetime slate we were not confident at all, and on the final drive he was in second place and about to win hundreds of dollars on a $2 bet, just because he played one on an unconfident play.
Yes.
That's kind of how it happens. So I'm going to keep on running. We're going to keep on making money. But yeah, get in the Discord, follow us on X, TikTok, all that stuff. We had a big old viral video about Texas State, our alma mater, last week, leading up to that Arizona State Showdown on Thursday Night Football. That was really cool to see. But yeah, keep on interacting with us. We're getting very active on all kinds of social medias. We want y'all to interact, involve, ask questions, your takes, all that stuff, biggest stands. We're going to be talking about it all. We can't wait to keep on making those friends, making those connections, and prosper all together.
Absolutely. So like Cam said, like, comment, subscribe on this video, and get in every social if you can. And we will see y'all next time.
Yep.